Om Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsachanuramardhanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadguru. So we're studying the 5th chapter, which is on Jnana Yoga. It's the path of knowledge, which is probably why I like it a little more than maybe other chapters. We have had some wonderful verses. In the 16th and 17th verses, we saw knowledge is compared to a blazing sun, which destroys the darkness of ignorance. Adityavad jnanam, knowledge like the sun rising removes all darkness, just as it illumines all objects in daytime. Things in broad daylight are seen so clearly, indubitably. Exactly like that, the person of enlightenment, he or she will realize that I am Brahman. Brahman is the only reality. The world is an appearance of Brahman. This will be absolutely clear, not something abstract, not not philosophy or speculation, not a theory, not even something that you believe in or you would wish for to be true, but and a fact which is choicelessly there. It doesn't even depend upon you anymore. It's a fact. Once that breakthrough happens, then the 17th verse was interesting. There, Sri Krishna tells Arjuna how to get this knowledge. He gives 4 stages. He says the general interpretation is this: Tat Parayana. You have to be devoted to spirituality. You must make up your mind that I will become enlightened. This will be my purpose in life. And this is not crazy also, because from a Vedantic perspective, this is the purpose of human life. All of us, the purpose of our life is this. Even if we think that it is not the purpose of my life, I have got some other aim in life. We don't know. We don't realize what we are saying. Whatever be our goal in life, whether it be family or a career or being rich or science or art or whatever be our goal in life, basically we are aiming at uh, fulfillment. We're trying to get happiness, fulfillment, deep, lasting happiness, overcome suffering, know the very secret of existence. What is all this? These are fundamental questions to which we are trying to get answers. We're trying to get solutions in our life. And this is basically the quest for enlightenment. So knowingly or unknowingly, everybody is moving towards enlightenment. So Tat Parayana means consciously, knowingly, deliberately making up your mind and telling yourself, at least, even if nobody else, telling yourself at least, goal of my life is God. I mean, I've repeated this number of times, but I really like it so much that, Mahatma Gandhi says that when people ask me, who am I? And some people think I'm a freedom fighter, some think that I'm a politician, some think that I'm a social reformer, many things. But if you ask me, I'm a simple man in search of God. And that's what we must all be able to say. That is our true identity. So Tat Parayana means being completely dedicated to enlightenment, God realization. It need not be in this particular Vedantic path that I want to realize it, that I am Brahman and this particular Vedantic paradigm. If you take it up, very good. But there are so many people who are spiritual without being particularly, non-dualistic, Vedantic. That's also all right. The search for God in any form, in any religion, it's this is what is meant. Tat Parayana. Tan Nishthaha. Now, not just making up your mind that that's my goal, actually dedicating your life to it. So in a Vedantic sense, it would mean pursuing Shravana and Manana, turning up for class and reading this and thinking about it and, getting clarity and conviction about the Vedantic teachings, which we are all studying, trying to put it into practice in our lives. And then tadatmana. So after you get clarity, conviction, being one with it, that means giving your mind to it in nididhyas, in a Vedantic meditation, becoming one with those teachings. the result will be tad buddhaya. I'm on 17th verse. Tad buddhaya. Tad buddhaya means that knowledge, that breakthrough comes. Aham brahmasmi will come. So you see, starting spiritual life, that means includes getting all the qualifications, the fourfold qualifications, developing an ethical life, a disciplined life. Then Shravana and Manana in Vedanta. Then Nididhyasana, and then the breakthrough. That's one interpretation. That's the general interpretation. But last time I gave a more advanced interpretation. Advanced interpretation was, once you have the clarity and conviction, the breakthrough, then this is all about making that knowledge stable, becoming a jivan mukta. So you start with tad buddhaya, that knowledge arises. Then you stay with that knowledge day in and day out, intense meditation on the realization aham brahmasmi. Stay with it. So that is called tadatmana. Tanishtaha. Cut aside all other activities which may take you away from your Vedantic meditation. So it's a very monastic lifestyle which is being indicated here. And tatparayana. Even when other activities are going on, this should all, in every activity you should see Brahman. So that's the more advanced interpretation of this verse. But basically what it means is our life should be a quest for enlightenment. This should be not one of the boxes we will tick. So I've got $1 million, I've got a country house, and I've got a vacation to the Bahamas, and also enlightenment. One more, tick the box. I once in an ashram in the Himalayas, I met this young man from America. It's a long time before I came here. So this young man, he was sitting under a tree and reading Ashtavakra. So anybody who wants instant enlightenment, they go straight to Ashtavakra. And so I asked him, what are you doing here? And he said, he works for a firm in Wall Street and he has taken a 2-month sabbatical. So the 2 months is for becoming enlightened. And he's feeling depressed because the 2 months are almost over and he hasn't got enlightenment yet, and he has to rejoin his office back here in Manhattan. So I didn't know what to say. I sort of mumbled that, well, it takes a little bit of more time, you don't be in such a hurry. And he scolded me. I was a young monk at that time. He scolded me. He said, no, this is not Sri Ramakrishna's attitude. Sri Ramakrishna said this kind of casual, relaxed approach to spiritual life I don't like. Yeah, I must become enlightened. That is true. It's a good thing to feel that I must become enlightened now. But to give it 2 months, and also on top of that, that is one of the things that I have to do before getting back to Manhattan and rejoining my job. So it's not like that. The goal of your life now becomes enlightenment. So it's someone like, and remember, the great insight of Sri Krishna in all of this is that you need not actually be a monk in the mountains. You may be, but you need not be. You could be a person involved in a lot of activities in the world. Look at Mahatma Gandhi. Who was more busy than him? I remember when I was a young brahmachari in Deoghar, Ramakrishna Mission Deoghar. So I used to frequent the library there a lot. I was always impressed to see there were almiras full of the complete works of Mahatma Gandhi. If I'm not wrong, I have to check this. It was one set. Multiple almiras were full of one set of Mahatma Gandhi's complete works. So that was 100 volumes or more. Can you imagine one person doing all that writing and all that social activity, to uplift the Harijans, and so many, the upliftment of the villages, the basic education, the bunyadi siksha, the basic education which he started, harmony between religions, and on top of that, all his political activity for the freedom of India against the British rule, all of that. And in the midst of that, he is spiritual. His whole point is, all of it is my spiritual activity. It is my worship of God. That's the spirit of the Bhagavad Gita. In the midst of all activities, you can still sincerely say, all of this is my quest for God realization. So that's why Sri Krishna is telling all this to Arjuna and saying that you can still fight the battle, do your duty, and be spiritual. They're not two different things. So this is the great teaching of the Bhagavad Gita. I've told this story earlier, but let me repeat this. Mahapurush Maharaj, Swami Shivanandaji, was the uh, president of Belur Math. And one day this gentleman comes to him, this is 1920s, early 1920s, comes to him. And at that time, Mahatma Gandhi had started his non-cooperation movement against the British rulers. So this gentleman comes to him and complains that all these young boys, they are dropping out of college and they're neglecting their duties, their studies and their duties, and they're going on to join the movement started by Mahatma Gandhi against the British rule. They're just troublemakers. They're just avoiding the responsibility. Isn't it very bad? And Swami Shivananda kept quiet. Then a couple of days later, again the gentleman had come, and this time a young man had come to become a monk. So he bowed down to Swami Shivanandaji, who was the head of the order at that time, and he was given blessings and sent off to the monastery. And this gentleman was grumbling, Swami, is this right? Now Mahatma Gandhi is leading the nation in a struggle for freedom against the British rulers. And this young man is avoiding all those responsibilities and coming and becoming a monk, when the nation needs him. Then Swami Shivanandaji could not keep quiet anymore. He said, look here, I am quite sure that that Mahatma Gandhi, in the midst of all his activities and responsibilities and all of this, he enjoys peace of mind. And this young man who has given up the world, a career and family and friends, and will pursue God realization one-pointedly, I'm sure he will enjoy peace of mind. The only one I find without peace of mind is you, sir. So, yes. In fact, I'm going to speak up. The reason I'm going on and on about Mahatma Gandhi is actually there's a talk coming up at a institute in Los Angeles. Of course, it's all online now, next week. So I think I'll tell this story. The reason I'll tell this story, the one I just said, I'll tell this story is right now, there are, it's sad how Mahatma Gandhi is the target of criticism from different angles now. So there are right-wing people who criticize Mahatma Gandhi for apparently he loved the Muslims too much. And there are extra-liberal, the woke liberal kinds who criticize Mahatma Gandhi for being that he's not liberal enough. Apparently he was racist in some way. So I think this story fits that he enjoyed peace. It's these people on all sides of the political spectrum who have no peace, not only peace, they have no genuine sympathy for anybody at all. It's just, taking up different positions and making a name for themselves by. It's easiest to become famous if they target somebody who is like so high and famous like Mahatma Gandhi. Okay. Now, moving on. The next two verses are very beautiful. Let me chant and then we will talk about it. Vidyā-vinaya-sampanne brahmaṇe gavi hastini śhuni chaiva śhva-pāke ca paṇḍitāḥ sama-darśhinaḥ. The wise look with equal eye on a brahmana endowed with learning and humility, a cow, an elephant, a dog, and an outcast. So this enlightenment, when it comes, what is the form of that enlightenment? Remember, in Advaita Vedanta, two stages. First and most important is we realize what we are. So Advaita Vedanta questions this basic assumption that we are a body-mind. No, you are not. And then there are all these processes of investigating our experience of ourselves. Are you really this body? Are you really this mind or this personality which you identify yourself with? The method that Vedanta employs to find out who am I is actually, if you look at it carefully, it is to find out who or what I am not. It is actually a negation, a neti. The only way of discovering the rope is to negate the snake, the false snake. So what I am not, that is that clarity comes. When I begin to realize this, then what I am is intuitively realized. So why can't you directly say what I am? You can't directly say it because we have no experience of that. If you just say you are pure consciousness, what is pure consciousness? What is pure consciousness? Rather, if my attention is now drawn, instead of talking about pure consciousness, my attention is drawn, all right, notice this body. And for these reasons, you are not the body. You become at least intellectually convinced that, yes, I am not quite the body, but I never said I was the body. I am the person in the body. All right, let's now notice the person in the body. What are you? Are you the breath? Are you the thoughts, or the emotions, the perceptions, the memory? And one by one, we begin to see we could not be any one of them really, nor a combination of all of them. In this process, we are going from the gross to the subtle, from the outer to the inner. And as we do that, we will begin to appreciate what is meant by consciousness or awareness. Awareness is not a body. It's not something go inner and more subtle, breath. Not even that, because we are aware of it. It is not awareness. Are they perceptions? Seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching? Again, not even that. Go more inwards, more subtle. Thoughts, emotions, feelings? Not even that, because we are aware of those. More subtle, more inwards. The very understanding which we are using now. Not even that. That also changes, and that also we are aware of. That's also changing, objective, and we are aware of thoughts, we are aware of understanding, we are aware of the intellect. Even the ego, I, the feeling of I, it's a feeling. It's a function of the mind. Are you the ego itself? No, even the ego can be appreciated as an object of your awareness. When we begin to realize what awareness is, what consciousness is, I am indiscriminately using words like awareness and consciousness. What awareness or consciousness is in itself, apart from body, apart from mind, perceptions, memories, intellect, apart from all of that, apart from even blankness, apart from all of that, we begin to appreciate. And when we appreciate, we don't see it as an object. It can't be seen as an object. If you say, I am experiencing my awareness, you're experiencing something else. It is awareness which is experiencing or illumining. So we begin to realize that, what awareness is. And we realize we must be that constant awareness, which illumines all change. Change in the intellect, change in the mind, change in the prana, change in the body, change in the world. All of that is illumined. Illumined means we experience it. That is revealed by this constant awareness. And this awareness is not attached to anything, body, mind, thoughts. They come and go, they're all revealed. They're coming and going are revealed by the same awareness. So it does not stick, nothing sticks to it. It is, by implication, it must be immortal. It does not come and go. Other things come and go. All of these things we realize. And that's the first thing. This is the meaning of Atma. This is the meaning of consciousness. The second big thing, the great thing we have realized in this chapter, this is the first thing we have realized. It's already there in chapter 2. The nature of the Atman has been taught by, the first thing that Krishna taught Arjuna was the nature of the Atman. Who am I? And the second step is this, who am I? This consciousness we discover, is it one in each body, or is it one for all living beings? Billions of living beings, have they one consciousness, or are they separate? The bodies are separate, minds are separate, living beings are separate. So do they have separate consciousness? It seems to be logical. Then we discover, no, it is one consciousness in all beings. Then we go further. All these beings, the bodies themselves, and the minds, and the external universe, what is their relationship with awareness? Are they separate? Is it like light? And there's light here, and there's a book here, and the light illumines the book here. So is awareness like a light? It's often compared to a light, which reveals everything. So, but everything is separate from awareness, just that the book and the light are separate. They're not the same thing. Or is awareness and what it reveals are they one and the same thing? In the sense that what is revealed by awareness is not apart from awareness. Awareness is independent of it. Awareness is separate from what it reveals. But what it reveals, is it separate from awareness? That sadhu who put it very beautifully. दृष्टा तो दृश्य से अलग है, दृश्य क्या दृष्टा से अलग है? What drashta and drishya means, seer and seen. The seer is definitely distinct from the seen. You, the seer, you're definitely distinct from the seen. But what you see, is it distinct from you? What does that mean? Very simple. Think of the dream. In the dream, you see so many things, people and places and all of that. And you are the seer, you are the dreamer. Take it in a very simple way, the way we dream. Now, you, the dreamer, are not the things which you are seeing there. Clearly, you are different from them. But they are not different from you. Everything that you see in the dream is nothing other than you, the dreamer. It appears in your mind. What else is it? It has no independent existence. Similarly, we suddenly realize the next step in Advaita Vedanta. So all this was the first step. The next step in Advaita Vedanta is non-duality. That we realize all of this vast variety which we are seeing is not different from the consciousness which sees. Sees means experiences. All that consciousness experiences is not different from it. By the way, when I say consciousness experiences, somebody asked a question. Consciousness is experiencing, but this is not correct, because to experience something, you must change. When I see something, my eyes are active, they are changing. When I think of something, that's an experience. My mind is changing. So if consciousness experiences something, consciousness will change. But according to Advaita Vedanta, consciousness is beyond change. So when I say consciousness experiences, what I mean is consciousness does not directly experience. Consciousness illumines the mind with the reflected consciousness. It's the mind which is changing into vrittis and giving rise to various experiences. But the presence of consciousness is absolutely essential. Without the presence of consciousness, there will be no experience. It's like all the objects may be there, but if I don't switch on the light, there will be no illumination. So all the objects which are experienced by consciousness are not different from consciousness. Just like all the objects experienced by mind are not different from the mind in the dream. So this is non-duality. The variety of objects cannot be proved to exist apart from consciousness. And this becomes even more clear when you realize consciousness itself is existence. So it becomes what is called in mathematics or logic tautological. All these variety of objects cannot be proved to exist apart from existence. Obviously, apart from existence, non-existence. So nothing exists apart from existence itself, or Sat itself. And that Sat itself is consciousness. I'm making number of jumps, but many of you have studied Mandukya Upanishad and Drigdrishya Viveka Parokshanubhuti. You know the in-between steps. Okay. Why am I saying all this? This existence consciousness is you, the real you. And that we have realized now in the last two verses, we have come to this realization. Like the sun illumining everything, it becomes clear to us at the point of enlightenment that I am this existence consciousness. Unlimited being, unlimited awareness, and this very unlimitedness of being and awareness is Ananda, is bliss. So this is Satchidananda. Sat, unlimited existence, immortal existence. This is immortality. Chit, unlimited awareness. Behind every knowledge is this consciousness. Ananda, this unlimited fulfillment, ever fulfilled. This Satchidananda you are, and the world is not separate from this. Because the world is not separate from this, everything that you experience, all the variety of objects in all the different places at all different times, good and bad, pleasant and unpleasant, desirable and undesirable, noble and ignoble, all of it is in reality nothing other than this Satchidananda. Just as all the things that we experience in the dream, you meet your beloved friend in the dream, and you meet a very maybe annoying mosquito in the dream, and You visit a beautiful place and see a beautiful sunset, and maybe you see a dirty place and a drain or something. All of that is what? All of that is nothing other than you, the dreamer. Exactly like that, all of this entire universe, good and bad, all of it is actually not the universe, not the good and the bad, not people and places, not particles and animals and birds, not quasars or what are they like quarks, quasars and quarks, but this being consciousness. And with the network of Maya, it appears in this way. Since it is so, then the person of enlightenment will know at heart that whoever he or whatever he is interacting with, he or she, it is the same reality. And so that is the verse which we just read. One of the consequences of enlightenment is this same-sightedness. Now it sounds like a vision defect, nearsighted, far-sighted, and same-sighted. But same-sighted means seeing the one reality in all beings, one Brahman in all beings. So the way Krishna puts it, what is the form of enlightenment? This is enlightenment after completing the two stages. I am Satchidananda, and the world is nothing other than Satchidananda. Then, vidyā-vinaya-sampanne brahmaṇe. The Brahmana, the real Brahman is who? The one who is enlightened. So, the real definition of Brahmin in the Vedas, in the Upanishads, is one who is enlightened. This, not the person who belongs to a particular caste. That's a secondary meaning. The real meaning of Brahmin is the one who is enlightened. Vidya-sampanna, vidyā-vinaya-sampanne. That means vidya means knowledge. So this person is full of spiritual knowledge. And vinaya literally means humility. But vidya and vinaya, there's a saying which we learned as kids in India, vidya dadati vinayam. So true knowledge gives rise to humility. It is just a little bit of knowledge that gives rise to arrogance. But real deep knowledge gives rise to humility. It's just not humility. It's the manifestation of that knowledge. So the spiritual knowledge, the realization has come, aham brahmasmi. But even that is all internal. I mean, the enlightened person has realized it, fine. But how do we know externally? We must see the manifestation of that knowledge. And what is the manifestation of that knowledge? First of all, has it solved your problems? Can you say that I am at peace? The enlightened person should be able to say, at the very least, I am at peace, permanently so. No matter whatever is going on in life, with other people, with one's own health, with whatever is going on, difficulties, troubles, the enlightened person will say, I'm all right, I'm fine. Swami Shivanandaji, I like that. It's funny, in his old age, he was the president of the Ramakrishna order at that time, and he suffered terribly from asthma and other things. So one night, the news was that the Swami, the head of the order, he suffered all night. He could not sleep because of asthmatic attacks. Next morning, the monks, as usual, went to bow down to the president of the order. And one of the monks asked, Swami, are you well? How are you today? And Swami Shivanandaji answered, oh, I'm fine, I'm fine. Then this monk was taken aback. He said, but we heard that last night you didn't get sleep and you're suffering. Shivanandaji, as if a great light dawned on him. Oh, you mean the body? It's not at all fine. It's not doing well at all. So this clarity, he's not trying to say that everything's fine at the level of the body also. He knows there's a problem. But he is fine with it. I have myself seen Swami Ranganathanandaji, 13th president of our order. After he got a stroke in the brain, and then he, with a lot of physiotherapy and all, he recovered. His speech had become slurred and his movements had become the usual problems after a stroke, but he recovered more or less well. And then he was explaining to us what happens in a stroke. He is the patient. He was explaining how there's a disruption of the blood supply to certain regions of the brain. Everything he's explaining as if it's an object. He became quite interested in how a stroke happens after that, and he read up on books on it. But it's just like looking at an object. He is perfectly unconcerned about it. So, manifestation of your enlightenment. Have you solved your own problems. That is first. The enlightened person has no more right to grumble. That's one right you lose when you become enlightened. No more grumbling. And then, is it manifested as unselfishness, serenity, love for others, of, an attitude of service, of being a well-wisher for everybody, of deep, very natural sympathy for the sorrows of others. So all the qualities of a saint, to some extent, they must manifest in our lives. So that is what is meant by vidyā-vinaya-sampanne. It's not just Vedantic knowledge, not even just Vedantic enlightenment, but the qualities which should come, the ethical manifestation. So that's why I like Swami Vivekananda's definition of religion. Religion is the manifestation of the divinity already within us, not knowledge of the divinity. Just knowledge is not enough. Not even, like enlightenment. He uses the words realization or manifestation. So he is a very practical spiritualist. It's wonderful that you get these visions. It's wonderful that you have these sublime feelings. It's wonderful that you have realized clarity has come. I understand what is meant by consciousness and I am that consciousness. All very good. But is it being manifested? Are you able to overcome your suffering? And are you a blessing to yourself and to others around you? So that is what is meant by vidyā-vinaya-sampanne. Such a Brahman means enlightened person. Such a Brahman. And then he says, in such a Brahman, same reality the enlightened person sees. This is another enlightened person. The enlightened person sees the same reality in this enlightened person. Gavi, in a cow. Hastini, in an elephant. Śhuni, in a dog. śhva-pāke, in a most uncultured person. Literally, it means the dog eater. So I'll tell you about these examples, why these examples were used. Now, what it means is exactly what the Holy Mother said. Ma Sharada, she said at once, she said, just as Sharat is my son, so too is Amjad my son. Sharatu যেমন আমার ছেলে, আমজাদও তেমন আমার ছেলে. Who is Sharat? Swami Sarvapriyananda ji, the direct disciple of Sri Ramakrishna, the author of the great master, the wonderful book, the authoritative biography, spiritual biography of Sri Ramakrishna. He was the first general secretary of our order, a Jivan Mukta, an enlightened person, Brahmagyani, knower of Brahman, one of the first generation of monks of our order. And the Holy Mother, Ma Sharada, says, just as he is my son, exactly in the same way, Amjad also is my son. Who was Amjad? He was a Muslim dacoit, a robber who lived in the neighborhood, in the village in Jairambati, and he would rob people. But he had a great respect for the Holy Mother, and he was won over by her kindness and her love. But look, here is this enlightened monk, and here is a person who's not even of your own religion, who's a Muslim. Here is this person who is has all the wonderful qualities, literally vidyā-vinaya-sampanne brahmaṇe, literally an amazing example of the perfected spiritual person. And here is a person who's a robber who spends half of his time in jail. And yet, how can the Holy Mother say they are not only they are both my children, they're exactly the same to me? She would say at other times, I am the mother of the good and I am the mother of the wicked. Even if you have nobody, always remember you have a mother. So how can she say that? Where the differences are so obvious. And Krishna goes further. Cow, an elephant, and a dog. Now these examples, you'd see it in the Indian context. So cow was and is highly revered because of many cultural and religious reasons. So in certain parts of India, definitely cow is even worshipped. So it is like the abode of the gods, like that. So a cow, but it's an animal. It's still an animal. And then an elephant, not as highly revered as the cow, but in some places, especially in the south of India, it's a well-known temple animal. So it's there in temple procession. So temples are, they pride themselves in not how many SUVs they have, maybe these days too, but they would pride themselves in how many elephants they have. Why in temples? Ashrams also. I remember when we were young novices in Deoghar, the head of another monastery came visiting. So in order to establish his superiority over our Swami, the Swami was in charge of our ashram, the Mahanta of our ashram, the abbot. So the visiting Swami, first thing he asked was, how many elephants do you have? I have 4 or 5 elephants, something like that, he said. And how many elephants do you have? And our poor Swami said, but I have none. And so obviously the hierarchy was established. I am a bigger Swami than you are because I have 5 elephants and you have none. So elephant is a symbol of, I mean, maybe because it's a symbol of Ganesha also, it could be that. But it's a temple animal and it's also respected. But it's still an animal. And the enlightened person sees this fully realized Jivan Mukta, enlightened being, the same what he sees in this enlightened being, the same Brahman he sees in the cow, he sees in the elephant. And then again he sees in the dog, in śhuni, in the dog. So in the ancient Indian hierarchy of animals, the dog was considered an unclean animal and lowest. So this kind of classification doesn't work here in the United States today. The dog would be much higher ranked, maybe even above the enlightened person. So just next to God. So DOG is just next to GOD. So it needs some explanation. But there it was seen as an unclean animal, the lowest of animals. No longer so. I mean, dog is very popular in India nowadays, but obviously not as popular as it's in New York. You just have to go out to Central Park and see how pampered the dogs are. I've seen a poor baby a toddler being dragged along willy-nilly by its mother, but in the pram, the dog is sitting there. So I've seen another place, leash. There's a baby leash and a leash for the dog, and the mother is holding a mobile phone in one hand and 2 leashes in the other. One leash is connected to the toddler and the one to the dog. So this example has to be understood in its context. There, the dog was regarded as an unclean or low animal. But even in that, the enlightened person sees the same divinity, not one bit less, exactly the same divinity as in the fully enlightened Jivan Mukta. Just as Sharat is my child, Amjad too is my child, like that. Though the differences are vast. And then the most cultivated, enlightened, the most superior among human beings, the enlightened being, and the most inferior among enlightened among human beings, it says śhva-pāke, the dog eater, who is an outcast, who is inferior in learning, in manners, has the lowest status in society. You have to understand ancient Indian sutta. Why it's ancient, even until recent times. So outcast. And you see the same divinity in the outcast also, as in the enlightened person, as in the cow or the elephant or the dog. I was reading Joseph Campbell. Joseph Campbell went from New York to India in the 1950s with Swami Nikhilanandaji, and he wrote this book, Bakshish and Brahman. So he was unsparing about all the filth and corruption and all that he found in India. But he says on the surface, it's so filthy, but there's this amazing civilization underneath it. He's ecstatic about that, but he's very critical about what he found in the, the dirtiness and although many things have changed. For example, he notes that even the big cities in India, Delhi and Calcutta, he visited all of that, and he said, you hardly see any woman outside. And that has changed so much in the last 50, 60 years. You see women now going to work in every sphere of life. But Joseph Campbell also notices the reverence for the cow. And he notes, it is dry humor, he says, this cow silliness has to stop. This cow silliness has to stop. I remember in Santa Barbara, one of the nuns told me, the American nuns, she told me that many years ago, an Indian Swami, not Prabhavanandaji, somebody else. So he was grumbling about why the nuns had kept a dog in the convent, and he was saying, "Well, dog instead of a dog, how about you keep a cow, a pet?" I don't know what Central Park would be like if everybody took their cows out for a walk. Śhuni chaiva śhva-pāke cha paṇḍitāḥ sama-darśhinaḥ. The Pandit has the same vision of divinity in all of these beings. Who is a Pandit? A real Pandit. Now this Pandit, the word has entered into the English language. So there's a Wall Street Pandit and an election Pandit. So Pandit is like an expert who gives opinions about different things in society. The word Pandit originally in Sanskrit meant a scholar. So in India, all Sanskrit scholars are called Pandits. But the derivation, Shankaracharya gives in some place in his commentary in the Bhagavad Gita. Pandit is Panda. It comes from the word Panda. Panda means Atma Vishaya Prajna. We often think Panda is a temple, in Puri Jagannath or in Dakshineshwar, and all these Brahmin priests are there who will give you a tour and offer puja on your behalf and try to extract as much money from you. And we think that's our idea of a Panda. But the word Panda actually means the enlightenment about the self. Atma Vishaya Prajna. That's the definition of Panda given in Bhagavad Gita commentary by Shankaracharya. So a Pandit is one who has realization about the Atman. That's the real meaning. That's the etymological derivation, one of the derivations of the word Pandit. Atma Vishaya Prajna. That is Panda. And one who has it is called Pandit. And this Pandit, what does he see? His enlightenment, his or her enlightenment is that in the highest saint and in the most uncultured person, in a cow, in an elephant, in a dog, in fact, in every being, he sees the same divinity, not more or less. And yet, so here is the two levels of truth, Paramarthika and Vyavaharika. Paramarthika, absolute truth, it's all Brahman. Vyavaharika, at the transactional level, you will deal with life as it comes. So when the dog comes, you don't bow down to it and chant the verses in praise of the guru. You don't do that. Or when the enlightened saint comes to your house, you don't offer it a dog biscuit. So you do exactly what is necessary. How does that work? Once you realize all the ornaments are made of gold, does that prevent you from recognizing a necklace for a necklace or a bracelet for a bracelet? Of course not. You will still put the necklace on your neck and the bracelet on your wrist. And if somebody says, but it's all gold, why are you putting the necklace? Gold, you can put the necklace on your wrist and the bracelet you can put on your ear or something. No, we understand that there are two levels of reality. So we do that in our day-to-day life also. Similarly, the enlightened person will know how to behave. And in fact, the enlightened person can behave in a much better way because of enlightenment. That the little petty personal equations we have will not operate in the case of this enlightened person, because the enlightened person knows everything is Brahman and everybody is nothing other than Brahman. God is present everywhere, inside and outside. Therefore, he or she will have the highest respect, in fact, devotion for everybody he or she meets, and will act properly, whatever is necessary in each case. With people whom he can help, he will help. That will be the worship he's giving to Brahman there. To the hungry, he will offer food. That is his worship to God. To the ignorant, he will offer education. That is his worship to Brahman in that form. To the saintly person, he will go and sit at his feet and learn about Vedanta. That's also the worship of God in that form. So in whatever form, all of it will become an expression of the divinity. It will not, this realization of Brahman will not hamper. It will help you in day-to-day life. Of course, again, let me qualify that. There are people, Jivan Muktas, enlightened persons who become so absorbed in God consciousness that they find it difficult to function in day-to-day life. We know such stories of such saints, who, the saint who came to Dakshineshwar, and Sri Ramakrishna saw him, who was eating the food. After food, people have eaten food and the leftovers are thrown away. And there's a dog eating the leftovers. And this apparently madman, but also apparently an enlightened person, is eating together with the dog. He's put his one hand on the dog's shoulder. The dog is also eating and he's also eating. You think he's mentally unwell or insane. No, he's actually an enlightened person who, for such people, the differences which appear in the apparent level of truth, vyavaharika, those differences are becoming slowly erased. And the underlying divinity is shining forth so strongly, it's difficult for them to function at our level. That might also happen. It happens to people who are very deeply immersed in God consciousness. Same Swami Shivananda. So every day, monks and devotees would come and bow down to him. He was the president of the Ramakrishna order. Now it was seen that he would bow down to them also. And it really made people feel uncomfortable. So you're bowing down to the president of the Ramakrishna order, and he's a disciple of Sri Ramakrishna. He's an enlightened person. You bow down to him and he bows down to you. You feel uncomfortable. And he says, Swami, why are you doing that? And then he said, what can I do? When these people, they come to me, I can't see their human aspect. I see their Ishta Devatas. So whatever is your chosen form of God, that shines forth. How can I talk to God in that form? How can I give advice? I have to bow down. After some time, that form fades away and the human form comes in front. Then I can give advice. Then I can teach. And so it can happen that the vyavaharika level, the transactional level at which we interact with the world, it can get erased in the case of some people for some time. And of course, in samadhi, it gets erased, of course, for that particular period of time. Then the next verse is, so this is one major consequence of enlightenment, sama-darśhinaḥ. All the high and the low that we see, this difference is erased for the enlightened person. Tallest of trees and the shortest of bushes, it all seems the same when you climb up. I remember climbing up a particularly high peak and looking down into a valley in the Himalayas when I was staying there. And all those towering trees, which I used to walk through from that peak, when I looked down, they all looked like stalks of grass far down in the valley. So all the so-called high and mighty and the so-called poor and miserable, they all seem the same from a very high altitude, from a very high lofty perspective. Sama-darśhinaḥ. This is also another reason, I must add this, that this practice of equality, this practice of considering people, everybody to be your equal, and sort of demolishing hierarchy, that's a good thing for Vedanta. Swami Vivekananda, more than 100 years ago, he noted that Indian society where he had come from is very hierarchical. Caste, the well-born and the poor and the inferior. Just notice even the language here. So the dog eater is an example of a very inferior person. But when Swami Vivekananda noted more than 100 years ago when he came here, even Europe is hierarchical, was and is also hierarchical. But when he came to United States, Swamiji noted the democratic spirit here. He writes that is today St. Patrick's Day? Yesterday. So he says that when Pat comes from Ireland, he's beaten down and cowed down. And when he comes to New York and he's told, well, Pat, you are as much of a man as I am. And he stands up straight and he walks, and that, the dignity comes back to him. And in a few days, you cannot recognize him. And he says, that spirit of sameness, he says that Vedanta has a greater hope here. If people become spiritual, Vedanta has a greater hope here. In India, it's this distinctions, high and low, are so deeply pushed in over centuries of millennia. So, sama-darśhinaḥ. Yes, from an enlightened perspective, all are same. And that was very well understood in India. Whether you are a Vedantic and Advaitin, you see everybody as Brahman and everybody as your own self. Doesn't matter if the person is high born, low born, man, woman, Hindu or Muslim or atheist or whatever. Or even from a devotional perspective, it is understood that the devotee of Krishna has no caste. This is a saying among the Vaishnavas. The Holy Mother, Sri Ramakrishna would say, Holy Mother would say, among the children of Thakur, there is no caste. So this is a devotional perspective. But quite apart from the devotional perspective, the social perspective, if one has a democratic spirit, it is easier to absorb and understand Vedanta, because this sameness, oneness, this is it's not even equality. This is something far higher than equality. It is oneness. Literally, you are that. The so-called other is you. There is no difference really, ultimately. So this is why Vivekananda mentioned this. Then the next verse is also very beautiful. Ihaiva tair jitaḥ sargo yeṣhāṁ sāmye sthitaṁ manaḥ nirdoṣhaṁ hi samam brahma tasmād brahmaṇi te sthitaṁ. Very beautiful verse. Even here in this relative existence is conquered by them whose mind rests in equality. For Brahman is even and faultless. Therefore are they established in Brahman. A very important point has been mentioned here. Where will you get salvation? Where will you get moksha? Where will you get nirvana, freedom? Here or elsewhere? In this life or after death? So most religious approaches are, how can one become free in this life itself? The body itself is subject to old age, disease, and ultimate death. How can that be perfection? That's crazy. So there is perfection. We promise perfection in our religion, but it's only after death. It may be in a different place. You go to heaven or Vaikuntha, the abode of Vishnu, of Narayana, or heaven, or the land, the pure land of the Buddha. Or somewhere you go, and there you will get perfection. After death, or a different time, not now, but after death. Not now, but coming after the coming of the Messiah. Something after, later, in that particular time. Not in this body, but in a more perfect body, which you will get when you go to heaven. It will be made perfect. You will get perfect body. So many of these dualistic religions, theistic religions, they promise this perfection, freedom in some other place, in some other time, in some other form or body. Look at Advaita Vedanta in radical distinction from this. It says, ihaiva, here itself, now itself, here itself, as you are. And that sounds cool, but how is it possible? It's because as you are, what are you? You are Brahman. You see, you are this little body subject to old age, disease, COVID, death. Then perfection is not possible. But you are not this body. This is what you realize. All the good and bad which appears is appearance in a movie. It does not affect the screen at all. The screen on which the movie plays. You are the screen. Let the movie go on. You don't have to stop the movie to attain freedom. When is the screen free of the movie? Okay, this is the question. When is the movie screen free of the movie? After the movie is over? Well, yes. But what about during the movie? During the movie too. There's nothing that happens in a movie. The worst of earthquakes, the greatest of floods or fires has the slightest effect on the screen. The greatest of tragedies will not make the screen weep. The greatest of comedies also will not make the screen laugh, because they are at two levels of reality. The screen is the absolute reality, whereas or technically from Vedantic perspective, the screen is the vyavaharika and the movie is the pratibhasika. The screen is transactional and the movie is illusory or appearance. Similarly, Brahman is paramarthika, absolute. This movie of the world is vyavaharika, transactional. Therefore, it does not affect you. You as Brahman, you are free here itself. You just have to realize that the difference is not between being free and not free. The difference is not between being here and in heaven. No. The difference is not between being in this life and after death. No. The difference is only between ignorance and knowledge. between not knowing it or realizing it and knowing it and realizing it. Ihaiva, taihi jitaḥ sarga. Sarga means creation, birth and death. They have conquered birth and death. They've gone beyond birth and death. When? Not after death. Now, here itself. So this is called sadhyo mukti. Sadhyo mukti is direct liberation. And this is promised by Advaita Vedanta. And it's promised because you already have it. That's your very nature. You just have to realize it. What is the characteristic? Sāmye sthitaṁ manaḥ. For those whose minds are centered in sameness. What sameness? He says, nirdoṣhaṁ hi samaṁ brahma. Brahman is that sameness. The same existence consciousness place, the same radiant divinity in every being, at all times, in all places, unconditionally present. What language Swami Vivekananda used here? It might be even considered blasphemous. The very worm is brother to the Nazarene, he says. The very worm. A Nazarene is a son of God, Jesus Christ. The worm is the brother because the same divinity everywhere. It's the maximum expression in, say, in Ramakrishna or in Jesus or Krishna. There is very little expression in the worm. But the reality is the same behind both of them. And he says, nirdoṣhaṁ, beyond any fault. Philosophically, it means beyond karma. Brahman never enters into karma. The papa and punya, the merits and demerits, sins and good deeds, they have no effect at all on Brahman, just as what happens in the movie has no effect on the screen. Tasmād brahmaṇi they stay sthitaḥ. And therefore, they are established in Brahman. Let me quickly look at the activity in the chat. So two very beautiful verses. They have the same theme. What is the theme? Sameness. Why sameness? Because all is Brahman. Rather, more precisely, all is not. Brahman alone is. And you realize that. Consequence, you get freedom here and now. Right away, in this life. Let's go through the questions. Oh, Abhijit has given 98 volumes. Gandhiji's complete was all right. So I was very close. 100 volumes. How could that man write 98 volumes in the midst of that intense life? And it's all available online. How is jnana? Alpana is asking, how is jnana same as the self? What is jnana? Jnana is knowledge. Is knowledge the same as the self? So if I read an encyclopedia, is my self going to get bigger? If I get amnesia, is my self going to become less? No. Jnana is same as the self in what sense? Jnana has two meanings. One is vritti jnana, one is swarupa jnana. Vritti jnana means the knowledge in the mind, the movements of the mind, the activity of the mind. That produces the knowledge with which we are acquainted with. When I read a book, when I hear something, learn something, remember something, these are all called vritti, activity of the mind. But behind all vrittis is what? Consciousness. The one unchanging awareness, which you are. You should say, I am behind all vrittis. Behind means I am the illuminer of all vrittis. I am the revealer of all vrittis. All the vrittis of the mind, they appear and disappear in me. You, the foundation, the ground of all of these vrittis, the illuminer of all of these vrittis. I'm translating from Hindi. Satta or spurti. Satta means existence, spurti means illumination. You give existence to all thoughts, all knowledge, and you illumine all of that. That is revealed because of you. Another name for you is jnana. So jnana has these two meanings. Activity of the mind, the knowledge which you get in the mind, very precisely, vritti jnana. And consciousness itself, the reality, swarupa jnana. So in that sense, jnana is same as the self. Not in the sense of the activity of the mind. Anuradha is asking, could you please explain the difference between awareness and consciousness? No, awareness and consciousness I'm using indiscriminately. You see, because there is no clear word corresponding to Chaitanyam. Many words used in Vedanta: Chaitanyam, Chit, Samvit, Chiti. There are different words which are used in Vedanta, but there's no exact equivalent in English. That's why awareness and consciousness I'm using the same sense. Little confusion is raised because of, for example, I've seen Nisarga Datta's book, those who have read I Am That. So he will say something like, this consciousness is temporary. When the body dies, the consciousness is gone. Only awareness remains. So what actually, it's all translation from Marathi. So in what sense is he using awareness and consciousness? He's using consciousness as vritti jnana and awareness as swarupa jnana, as pure consciousness. So I'm just using words like that. I mean Chaitanyam, pure awareness, pure consciousness. Bill is asking, who is the divine dreamer? Can't be consciousness. It's conscious. Divine dreamer, as we have to go back to Vedanta Sara, consciousness plus the causal body plus the subtle body. So the divine dreamer would be precisely the cosmic mind, Hiranyagarbha, who is the sum total of all our minds. Consciousness in itself does not dream. And by the way, even divine dreamer, one need not use that terminology because it's just an example. You can just as well say the divine creator. Punita ji says, dream state and its people and objects are easily resolved as non-dual by almost all, regardless of faith, nationality, etc. Despite similarity, the waking state and its people and objects are difficult to resolve or accept as non-dual, even for the most dedicated seekers. Why so? Why so? How best to remove this ignorance single-pointedly? Okay, this is a very single-pointed question. Dream state and its objects, its contents, are resolved as non-dual. What does it mean? The moment we wake up, we realize whatever and whoever we experienced, whatever, whoever, whenever we experienced in the dream world, nothing other than me, the dreamer, my mind, other than my mind. So I have become identified with the dreaming mind. When I wake up, I was dreaming. Oh, it's all nothing other than my dream. Fine. Then the non-duality means there is no second thing in my dream apart from me, the dreamer, that becomes clear. Only from my perspective as the waker. Now, what perspective do I have to adopt in the waking state to realize this entire universe is nothing apart from me? What perspective? And why is it difficult? We have to adopt the perspective of consciousness. For that, first of all, I have to become aware of what, or understand at least, what is meant by consciousness. And for that, we must thoroughly go through these processes. Drigdrishya viveka, the discrimination. Take it very seriously, step by step. Follow it in your experience, not as an argument, not as a philosophy. In the first instance, as an argument, as a philosophy, but actually in our own experience. It's a wonderful thing that it's available to us right now. It's not something that is promised as a result of a lot of sadhana you will get in this life, maybe next life, who knows. No, it's available to you right now if you look closely. That's all, you have to look closely. And how to look is being pointed out by these texts. Do Drigdrishya Viveka, do the Panchakosha Viveka, do the Avastatraya of the Mandukya. And notice what consciousness is. Step one. Notice means get a clear idea at least, get a clear understanding of what is meant by consciousness. You may say, oh, no, I know all of that. I know what is consciousness. No, you don't. In most cases, we do not know. We are just thinking about some subtle form of the mind. I'll tell you something. If you get a very clear idea of what is meant by consciousness, just an understanding, a very clear understanding of what is meant by consciousness, you will become enlightened. Enlightenment is nothing other than the deepening of this understanding. It's that close. It is you. Why should it not be? Why should you not become enlightened? So actually we do not understand. That's why that's why in classical Vedanta, the emphasis is not on meditation. The emphasis is not even on reasoning. The emphasis is on listening, Shravana. The Upanishads and Rigdrishya Viveka, the Gita, the Aparoksha Anubhuti, Vivek Chudamani, they all are saying one and the same thing. Just listen carefully. If you get bored of listening to the same thing over and over again, there are so many different texts. That's why you have a wide range of texts, all telling you the same thing, all trying to slowly take you by the hand, step by step, point you towards your reality and hope that you make the jump. So make that jump. But even that is not the answer to Punitaji's question. Once you have made the jump, you have taken the perspective of consciousness. It's that deep, that easy and that difficult. From that perspective, you have to resolve the objects of the waking state. All the people and the things in the waking state, they are non-dual, not second apart from you, the consciousness. You have to only from that perspective. Otherwise, we have the perspective of body-mind. From that perspective, you cannot resolve the objects of waking state into Atman. You cannot realize non-duality here. You can't realize non-duality here. I asked a very great teacher of Advaita. He teaches in Chennai. So, and he told me this thing, that the Drishti Shrishti Vada, that is from a dream perspective. From the waking perspective, if you want to resolve everything back into consciousness, you must take the stand as consciousness. Right now, what stand are we taking? We are consciously or unconsciously, knowingly, unknowingly, we naturally take, I am this person. Imagine, in the dream, you are also a person in your dream. And if that person tried to resolve the entire dream universe into himself or herself, impossible, can't do it. You would have to wake up from the dream. So that is the answer. How best to remove this ignorance single-pointedly? Concentrate on Shravana. Then concentrate on experience. Experience means whatever you are hearing, whatever the teaching is, notice in your experience. Carefully notice the body. Carefully notice the breath. Carefully notice thoughts. Carefully notice the intellect which is noticing. Go beyond that. Carefully notice the blankness. Try to notice the noticer. You can't, but you will become the noticer. So that is consciousness. But actually you must do it in experience. The usual result of trying to do that is a headache. Then Vishwanathan says, Namaste Swamiji, you mentioned that for some Jivan Muktas it is difficult to operate at the transactional level, Swami Shivananda story. Sometimes from our perspective it looks like suffering. Ramana Maharshi leaving his home and going hungry or meditating in different difficult spaces. For them, are they able to transcend such suffering because they see the deeper truth? Correct. They can transcend. If they bring their mind to the body, they will actually experience suffering exactly as much as we do. But they can also see the underlying truth, the deeper truth, the reality, the screen behind the movie. And so in that sense, they transcend the suffering, whereas we cannot, because we operate only at the level of the movie. We operate only at the level of the dream. And therefore, it's very difficult for us to transcend. They can transcend. Then Abhijit is asking, these words, awareness and existence, are so tightly coupled that we can't talk about one without the other. Whatever exists has to be in awareness, and whatever is in awareness has to exist. This super tight bond points to the fact that awareness is existence and existence is awareness. Thus, they are not two different words, but are the same thing. Is this so? Absolutely so. But the problem is this. What you are saying is already, if you have understood that, you've already gone very far ahead. Normally, in the waking state, existence and awareness are not coupled. So, I exist, no doubt about it, and I'm aware. I'm aware of my own existence and I'm aware of other things. But I see so many objects in front of me. A laptop is there, book is there, table is there. I see them as existing, but it doesn't seem that they are awareness. I know what you are saying. This existence cannot be appreciated apart from awareness, so that it does not exist apart from awareness. Awareness and existence go together. In fact, if you notice closely what you mean by existence in your experience, what you mean by existence in your experience is nothing other than your awareness. Notice, whatever we think as existing is basically your awareness only, which gives you the feeling of existence. And it's your feeling of existence which is borrowed, so to speak, by everything that you experience as existing. Astitva and Chaitanya are deeply coupled. They are one and the same thing. You're right. But in a normal waking state, it seems to be separate. It seems that this is the question that I asked the master of Advaita who teaches in Chennai. The objects of the world seem to exist apart from me. When I leave the room, this seems to exist. It's sort of intuitive for us. The world exists, and then I come to be aware of it. It is the perspective of Srishti Drishti Vada. World is created, and then I'm thrust into the world and I'm experiencing it. But how do we go to the fact that everything is in my experience? I know my thoughts and my dreams are in my experience, but there's an external world which does not seem to be in my experience. That's because I'm identified with this individual being, body, mind. That's why this is happening. So this realization, existence and awareness are the same thing, is the key which will open the door. Charles Chow is saying, then what is intuition? See, again, these words are very approximate. Intuition or instinctive feeling that is used in a certain way in English. I am trying to use it for a very specific use, that when you have seen very clearly with your intellect, you've seen very clearly that I cannot be this body, I cannot be this subtle body, I cannot be even the causal body, the blankness beyond physical body and subtle body, then I intuitively grasp the experience, the witness of these bodies. That's where intuition works. One Swami explained it to me very well. Just watch this. I liked it so much. It's exactly like that, actually. It is in an aquarium. Have you seen fish? They swim like this. The fish are swimming like this. Little fish, they swim like this. And when they reach the end of the aquarium, what do? They swim like this, and then they turn this way and come again, start swimming this way. They make a sudden turn. Have you noticed this? Can you make that sudden turn into yourself? Not into body, not into breath, prana, not into thoughts, not even into understanding, not even into the darkness of sushupti, into that which illumines and reveals, because of which all of these are experienced by you. That is your real nature. Pradeep Bose is asking, worldly folks seek pleasure or happiness via change and variety. They consider sameness as boring. But enlightened beings are in bliss while perceiving sameness amidst the same variety. Is this a valid observation? Yes. But their bliss comes not from the sameness. It is the sameness which underlies all this wild variety. When the variety is not there in samadhi, they are at absolute peace. And when the variety comes, they are in delight, because they see the sameness appearing in this variety. Whereas for us, what happens is we jump into the variety and we embrace a little part of it, this body and mind, as I, my life, and everything else is the other, from whom I can get something or I can lose something. This raga, dvesha, likes and dislikes start. We are all immersed in the variety without knowing the background. We are immersed in the movie without knowing the screen, without knowing it's a movie. We are in the dream without knowing the dreamer. This is the problem. The enlightened person knows the dreamer, knows that it is a movie, and therefore can enjoy the aesthetic experience of the movie. It is art to the enlightened person. To us, it's tragedy. So enlightened person experiences a variety just like us, but it's a delight for the enlightened person. In Kashmiri Shaivism, again and again, Abhinavagupta bursts into poetic delight at seeing the variety of this. Is all of it is Shiva. Even the tragedies of life, the sorrows of life, from the enlightened perspective, of course, you should not go to a starving person, sick person, or humiliated person and say it is all Shiva. That is unkind. Okay, let us end here. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Shri Ram Krishna Arpanamastu.